Okay guys, so welcome back again. So in this video, we'll learn Next.js 13 by building the FIFA standings API. So if we have a look at the completed application first, we see that we have this landing page here or the index page of the application. And if we go to standings here, we see the current standings as on date, that is today is 22nd November. So we are seeing the current standings because only 3 matches have been played and only these teams have played, and we see the total points they have earned. How many matches they have won, how many they have lost, and how many they have played, and how many of them have been drawn here. So this is a very basic or simple application using Next.js 13 by doing server-side rendering. And yep, so that's what we are going to build in this video using Tailwind CSS. So if you like the application that we are going to build, and if you're still here with me, so please hit that subscribe button. It motivates me a lot to bring you more of these videos. So without wasting any time, let's dive into code and let's see how it is done. So the API which we are going to use is by this guy called Ramin MR. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but this is the guy here. And he has a free API, World Cup API. That is a data set for the API. And it provides us with a lot of things here, though we need to have a API token, but it is all free here. So without wasting any time, let's dive into code and let's create our Next.js application and set it up with Tailwind CSS. So let's go here on our terminal, and what I've used is here is create next app at latest with the experimental app feature, because you want to use server-side rendering or the new app feature or the new app directory that Next.js 13 uses. So let's do this, and it would ask us a couple of names. So let's give it FIFA standings like this. And do we like to have TypeScript? So let's say no. Have ESLint, yes, and then it would take a couple of seconds to bootstrap the Next.js application. So the application has been created. So let's cd into the folder called FIFA standings, and now let's open it in VS Code because that's my favorite text editor. So now we are inside the Next.js application, and now we are going to set up Tailwind CSS with it. So if you go to this link here, and I'll provide this link in the description below, and it tells us how to set up Tailwind CSS. So what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to copy a couple of commands on this page into our application. And let's open a terminal here. Let me paste it here. So basically we need to install Tailwind CSS, post CSS, and auto prefixer to get Tailwind set up and running. And now we need to initialize a Tailwind config files. So that we can do using Tailwind npx tailwind init-p. And you can directly copy and paste the commands. You do not need to remember them. And we see that we have this post CSS config.js file and Tailwind config.js file installed here or created here. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my tailwind.config.js file, and we need to add in these paths here because only then we would be able to use Tailwind CSS in our project. So let's go to this tailwind.config.js file, and here we need to paste it inside the content thing because that's what it is mentioned here. And let me paste it here. And this is like recommended, or it is mentioned here that now since Next.js using an app directory instead of the pages directory, or apart from the pages directory, so we need to have this thing enabled here so that Tailwind can target the files inside this app folder also, that is this folder also. So that's about this thing here. And then finally we need to import all the base components and utilities from Tailwind into our global.css. So let's go to our app folder here, and if we could go to this globals.css file, we need to import it at the very top. And what I can do, I can remove each and everything from the bottom here. That is, our globals.css only contains these Tailwind utilities, components, and base files here. And let me also save this Tailwind config.js file, and we are not going to do anything with this file anymore. So this is also set up. And for this page module.css, I'm going to simply delete it from here. And now let's go to the page.jsx file, and here I'm going to simply remove this file also, that is, or this import also, because we have deleted this file from here. So let me remove it from here, and now I'll get rid of each and everything from this thing here, or from this file here, that is from page.jsx file, because this is the entry point of our application that displays us the index page. So let me simply put in a div here, and let me simply say FIFA 2022, and let me give it a class name here. So this is only for testing purposes, that whether our Tailwind integration is working or not. So text 4 Excel and text reg date-500. So if we save this and if we run our application, so let me do npm run dev to run our application, and our app is running on port 3000. So if we go to localhost port 3000, we should be seeing our application up and running and set up with Tailwind CSS. So we see that we are getting all the Tailwind utility classes that have been added here to this text here that says FIFA 2022. So firstly, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create this header here, that is this header inside the layout component or inside the layout.jsx file. So let's go here, and if you haven't worked with in Next.js 13 anyhow, then I have a complete tutorial on Next.js 13 which I would be linking here at the very top. So I would highly recommend you to go to that video and see that video so you know how Next.js 13 works. So now if we go to the layout.jsx file, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go inside this body tag here and just ignore these errors here, because it is the way my VS Code is set up. It always asks me to import React from React, but it is not always required here. But now the errors are gone. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go inside my body tags here. And here what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a nav component here or a nav element here. And here to this nav, I will be providing a class name of py3, that is padding y of 3 and border bottom of 2 pixels. So border b-2 like this. And then inside this nav bar, I would be simply creating a div with a class name of flex and justify content center. So justify flex and justify center. And if you're wondering that how am I getting these auto completions here, that is justify center, and it is because like I've installed in a extension here inside VS Code called Tailwind. So yeah, Tailwind IntelliSense here. So I've installed this extension, so therefore I'm getting all those auto completions here that we see here inside my text editor. So that's what I'm using here. And for now, let me simply provide in a link here. And this link is imported from next link here like this. And here in this link, I would be creating an H1 here that would simply say FIFA WC WS 2022. And I would like to give this H1 some styles here. So class name would be text 3XL. So 3XL, and then font would be black, and then text would be red 600. And now we need to provide an href attribute to this link here, and that would be simply /, that is the index route. So if we save this and if we go back, we should be seeing that we have this thing here, that is this navigation bar here. And now what I want to do is this, that I want to contain my body into some kind of a container here, because currently it expands the full width of the viewport here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to directly go to my body tag here, and I'm going to provide in a class name here called container, and mx would be auto to center it horizontally. So now we see that we have this container here, and now it only expands this much width here. And now what I'm going to do, I want to display the date here at the very right side here. So we can go back to our application, and here I would like to install one more dependency that is called LUXON. It is like a beautiful library if you want to handle dates inside JavaScript or any of the JavaScript application or TypeScript applications. So that would be npm LUXON. So it is a super handy library, and I do not use date functions or moment.js if I am only rendering out dates here. So let me do npm run dev again. And here what I'm going to do, inside a paragraph tag, I would like to render out my date. So I would be simply saying date time dot now, and we need to import date time from LUXON. So we would say import date time from LUXON like this, date time dot now dot to local string, and here I would be passing in date time medium like this. So if I save this, I would see the date created here, or I would see the date here. And now what I would do, instead of justify center, I would simply say justify between like this. And now I'm going to paste in some classes here for this date time here. So let me simply put in a class name here, and I'm pasting in some classes, that is my auto, font would be semi-bold and text would be small. So now we have some date set up here, as you can see here. And now let me go to my page.jsx file, because currently it is an empty file and it says FIFA 2022, but instead I would like to provide in a link here that should take us to the page called standings page. So here I would be simply putting in a button here that simply says standings like this, and then we need to provide in some class name for this button. So the class name for the buttons would be like, I'm simply again going to copy and paste, and then I would explain it to you that what each of the things mean or what each of the class names means. And the link would be going to href would be like /standings, and I'm going to create this page. And of course we need to import link from link, that is import. Firstly, we need to import React from React, and then we need to import link from next link. And now we have a background color on our button, that is red 700. And if we hover over the button, we are providing it a background color of 600. And then we have the horizontal padding of px3, which computes to be 12 pixels left and right, and py2 that computes to be 8 pixels top and bottom. Then we have a rounded border radius of 6 pixels, and then we have text white, font bold, and text is uppercase. So if we save this and if we go here and if we reload the application, we see that we are getting this standings here. And let me reset to 100 zoom here. So now if we click here, we see that this page is not found, that says 404. So what do? We go to app directory here, and we need to create a new folder called standings like this. And inside this standings page, I would like to create a new file called page.jsx, because in Nextjs 13 we need to create a file called page.jsx to render out the page inside the folder by the folder name. And here I'm going to create a page by the name, or the component by the name of staging page like this. So if I save this and if we go back and if we reload, we see that we are getting we are rendering out our staging page. So now we are almost there with the application, that now we know how to do the routing inside the Next.js application. So now what do we need to do? We need to use one REST client here inside VS Code to query that API. So if we go to the this GitHub page here, we see that to query with this API, we need to have some kind of a user token here. So for that, we need to make a post request to this endpoint, that is this endpoint, and it expects these parameters here. So let me increase the font size. So we need to make a post request to this endpoint to create a user. So for this video, I'm not going to create any kind of user authentication system or so. I'm simply going to create a REST client. I'm simply going to use a REST client inside VS Code to get the JWT token, and then I would be using that token to query the REST API for getting the standings of the World Cup 2022. So now what I'll do, I'll stop my application and I'll create a file called, let me clear the screen first, clear. And here I'm going to create a file called rest.http. And let me again run the application first so that it is always running in the background. And now what I'll do, I'll make a post request here to this endpoint. And the content type would be application JSON like this. And then we need to provide in some parameters for this endpoint. And that would be like, let me copy and let me paste. So this is to register a user here for this API. So here you can provide in your name. So let me provide in my name here. And then we need to provide in my email address. So let me provide in a fake email address here only for demonstration. And for the password, let me provide in the password here 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. And just bear with me and I will come to you that how this REST client is going to query that API. So if I save this file, so basically you can use even the curl inside your terminal, or you can use Postman or something like that. But I highly recommend you using this rest.http client, and it is by this guy called Huachao Mao, I suppose, because like REST client it is. So let REST client maybe, yep. So I'm using this extension called REST client, and by using this extension we can create a file called .http inside our application, and then we can directly make API calls. So that's what I'm using here. And I have a complete video about this REST client, and if you want to watch that video, you can go to my link here. And if I simply make a request here, we should be getting a response back. So we see that we are getting a response back from the server, and we would be getting our JWT here. So this is my token here. And if somehow you viewed this token or you see this token, don't try to use this because I would be revoking this token. But for now, I'm simply going to copy this token and I'll be pasting it inside my .env file, because this is the token that I'm going to use to make all the REST API calls. So let me close this thing here. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new file here called .env. So .env like this. And here I would be simply creating a token here, or not a token here, but an environment variable that would keep my token here. So if I save this and our application is restarted, or let me restart it, because sometimes .env doesn't work if we do not restart the application. So the application is restarted. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make an API call inside my standings page directly. So I would say const response equal to await fetch. And now to get the URL, that is from where to get the standings. If you scroll down, you have many API endpoints here. That is to get a list of all the teams, to get a list of all the matches. You can get the list of match by date also. But what we are going to use, we are going to use this standings API here. So let me copy this URL from here and let me go back to my application. And this is the URL I'm going to paste here. And then we need to provide in the headers here. And here the headers would be authorization. So authorization. And this would be coming from process.env.api_key, because that was the key that we installed. And then otherwise, if that does not exist inside my environment variable, then I would be simply passing an empty string to get a 404 something like that error. And now since we are using await here, we need to make this function as async. And don't worry about exposing your API keys here inside this standing page or this functional component, because this is all server rendered. No JavaScript is sent from this thing to our front end unless and until we specify this component to be a client component. So this is all server side rendering here. And now let me save this application and we would come back to this thing here again. So to do revalidate, or let me do it right away itself. And now what I'll do, I'll simply use one more flag here inside this fetch call by doing next, and then we'll say revalidate it every 10 seconds. That is, if a request comes over then 10 seconds, we would be simply sending back a response so with the current status, because like standings are like, it does not change second by second. It only changes, the standings only changes when a match is over. So a match goes around for 90 minutes. So it is not necessary to revalidate this page or build this page again and again. So you should pick a good sweet spot. So here I'm simply choosing 10 seconds to revalidate or to create this page again. And then what I would be doing, I would say const standings equal to await response.json like this. And then inside my standings page, I would be simply creating a pre-tag here that would simply say json.stringify standings, null, 2 to list out the standings here. So if I save this and if we go back to our application, we should be seeing that inside the JSON format here. So let me reload the page here and we should be getting the standings here, and we see that our standings or our response is coming here. And now what we are going to do, we are going to create this UI here. So let's go back, and now I'm going to give some class to this div here. So we would say class name would be equal to grid calls 2, and gap would be 4. That is, we want to create two grid layout here, one column for this, one column for this. So therefore I'm creating a 2 grid layout. And now let me remove, or let me simply keep the pre-tags here. And yep, so now what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to map through my standings. So standings.map standing. And here what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new component here that would say standing component. So that I'm going to create inside this standings folder to list out my standings. So new file, standing, so standing.jsx rfc to create a standing component. So standing section, let me call it that thing. So standing section, and then it would expect in a prop called standing like this. And this is all messed up here, and that is because like this. So here I would be simply so standing section like this. And now I can use this standing section inside my page.jsx file. So I would simply say a standing section like this, and then we need to provide in a prop called standing here, and then we need to provide in a key, and for the key I would be simply using standing.id, standing._id it was, I suppose. So why it is giving me an error, and it is because like it should be like this thing here. So if we save this, we have this thing here, and if we go back to our application, we see that standings.map is not a function. All right, so standings.map is not a function because if we simply comment out this thing, and if we have a look at the standings response here, we see that all the data that we are interested in is inside this data here. Status is success, and then we have the data here. So what we need to do, we need to simply get out the data from this thing here, .data like this. And now if we render out this thing, then we shouldn't be getting any error. So if we see here, we see that we are getting this 4 standing sections here. So now let's work around or work inside this standing section here, that is inside the individual section. So here what we can do, we are interested in a couple of things from this standing section, because inside a section here, we see that we have an array of teams. We have the group name here, and we have the ID of the section. So what we can do, we can simply say const ID group and comma teams equal to standing. So now here what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to remove this dummy text from here, and I would be giving this div a class name of padding 4, that is to have a padding of 16 pixels on all the sides. Then we want to have a shadow for this section, that is, you would be seeing that in a moment. And then we want to have a background color of gray 50, and then rounded LG to give it a border radius. And then inside this section, I would be creating a grid with 7 columns, because if we have a look at the completed application, we see that we have a grid of 6 columns here, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But for this first column, I would be like making the size here to span 2 columns. So therefore I'm creating grid call of 7 columns here. So then I would be creating a div here. So class name grid calls 7. So calls 7. And then the text size would be small, text XS for all the items inside this div. And then let me create a couple of paragraphs here. So first would be group, that is the name of the group. And for now, let's simply call it A. And then we would be creating a couple of more P paragraphs here. And for all the paragraphs, I would be given a class name of MX to be auto. And now for the first thing, I want to have played here. The second would be 1, third would be lost, draw, and last one would be points. And let me get rid of this A from everything. And now to the first item inside this 7 column grid, I would like my first item to span 2 columns. So I would simply say, or I would like to also give it a class of font bold. So let's give it a class name of font bold, and then call span to be 2 here. So if I save this, and if we go back here to the completed application, we see that we have this thing here, or our first row already here. So let's go back, and let's also give it a margin top here, because currently we see that it is sticking to the top navigation bar. So there are a couple of ways to fix that, but the easiest way would be for now to give it a margin top of, let's say, 4. So let's save this, and we see that now it has some spacing here at the top. So now the thing remains is to render out the correct items inside these grid boxes or grid items here. So if we see that, if we have a look at the particular standing, we see that we have a group here, and then we have the teams here inside that group. So we can get the group name from this group thing here and the teams from this teams thing here. So we have already destructured this group from this standing thing. So instead of group A, we can simply say group like this. And if we save this, we see that we have these 8 groups here, A to H. So now let's go back again. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a HR here. That is a horizontal rule here. So HR like this, and I would give it a class name of my2 only for styling purposes. And we see that we have this line here. And now let's go back. And now what I'm going to do, since we already have the teams here, so now we are simply going to use the map method on the teams here as well. So we would be saying teams dot map, and then we have the individual team. And now for the individual team, what we want to return, we want to simply return something to render out that thing. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new div here or new file here called team-row.jsx like this. And now let me simply create a functional component here, and I would simply say team row like this. And this would be expecting a team here. So let me save this. And now what I can do, instead of returning out from here, we can simply say team row, and that expects in a team. So we can simply say team would be team, and then we need to provide in a key here, and the key can be team dot name en, because name of the team is in English here. So we can see that we are getting this team here, and though we could have used the ID also, so team ID, or otherwise we are simply using the name in English here that says Qatar for now, or for each and every item inside that particular component. So now let's go to the team row page here. And now inside the team row, what we want to do, we want to return something. So firstly, we need to destructure the team here. So we can say const something equal to team. And what we want to destructure, we want to get the name in English. Then we want to destructure this MP. And if you want to know that what all these things means, you can again go to the documentation here, and you can see that if you scroll down, you can see that the meanings of each and everything is written here. So MP means matches played, matches won, lost, and so on and so forth. So let me put that as a reference here. So let me put it here. So let me put it like this. So what we are interested in, we are interested in matches played, we are interested in won, we are interested in lost, the draws, so would be D, and then PTS would be points like this. And now we need to simply render out this team row using these variables here. So that would be super simple to do. And now inside this div, what we want to do, we want to again use a 7-column grid as was in the header section. So we can simply say class name would be these class names, that is grid column 7, text would be small xs. And then what we want to do, we want to render out all the 6 elements, that is this element and then the rest of the items here. So this is super simple to do, that is last 5 sections, but this is a bit typical. So for that, what I'm going to do, firstly, I'm going to use the first item here. That would be a flex item here. So that would be, or let me do it later on. So firstly, what I'm going to do, I'm going to render out the image inside the image element, and we need to import image from next image because we are getting images from Next.js. So import image from next image like this. And now we need to provide in a source for this image. So source would be, we can check out this thing here. So we have the flag here with the image source here. So we can also destructure the flag from here. So that would be the source for the image. So we have the flag here. So the source would be this flag, and then we need to provide in a width here. So width would be 40 and height would be 40, and we also need to provide in the alt attribute. So that would be simply the name in English. So name in English. So if we save this, we have a look at the application here. We see that we are getting this error here that says that this host name is not defined inside our next config file to render out the image from the next image element. So that is pretty simple to do. We need to simply go to our next config.js file, and here we need to provide in the images key here, and we need to provide in the domains, that is from which domains we can expect the images. So our domain is this domain here that is provided inside the individual image. And if we go back and if we reload the page, our application should be able to up and running. So we see that this is still not working, and that is because whenever you change the next config.js file, you need to simply stop the application and you need to restart the application. So that would be fixing that issue, I suppose. So let me try and rerun the application, and now we see that we are getting all the images rendered out here. So now let's go back again and let's go to the team row, individual team row. And now after the team, we want to render out the name of the team. So that would be a paragraph tag. And here we can simply say name in AN. And now we need to provide in some class names. So the class names would be like, let me copy and paste it again because that would be again time consuming. So let me copy and let me paste it here. So we have the flex here, the items would be in center, that is vertically centered. And then we have the spacing between the items to be 4, that is 16 pixels by doing space x4. Then we have a margin of Y, that is a top bottom margin of 8 pixels. Minimum width would be maximum content, and text would be small. So if we save this, we see that we have this layout ready here for the individual teams. So we see that we are going somewhere near what we want to achieve. And now again, this column should span two, this should span 2 columns. So we would be saying call span would be 2 like this. So if we save this, we see that it is not spanning 2 columns here. And now let's fill out the rest of the things here. So the rest of the things would be a couple of paragraphs here. So let me simply copy and paste some paragraphs, and let me provide in a class name here. Class name would be margin would be auto like this. And then we need to fill out the details for each of the things items here. So firstly, we have the matches played. Secondly, we need to fill out the one, and then we need to print out the lost matches, and then we need to print out the matches drawn, and then finally we need to render out the points for that team. So if we save this and if we go back and if we reload, we see that we have this thing ready here, that is our standings are ready, up and working here. And now one thing remains is this, that what I want to do is this, that whenever this page is shown, we want to show the top 2 teams at the very top in each and every group. So we want this Ecuador and Netherlands to be at the very top. That is, these 2 should be the first teams here, and then Qatar and Senegal, because like they are the 2 top teams from each of the groups would qualify for the round of 16. So that's what we want to do. And for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use one more npm package called loadash. So let me clear out, and I will do npm install loadash. And now let me simply do npm run dev. And here what I'm going to do, I'm going to simply go to my standing.jsx file. And here what I want to do, before mapping out the teams, I want to filter out I want to order my teams according to the order in which their points are. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to import one order by from loadash, though you can use plain JavaScript, but to me, it makes no sense using plain JavaScript if you have a sweet library called loadash. So that's what I'm going to use. So instead of mapping out the team, so let me copy and let me comment it out, and let me keep it here only for reference. So instead of mapping the teams, I would simply say order by, and then I want to provide in my collection, that would be teams, and then the iterative, that is on which thing I want to order it by, and that would be points. And then the order in which So either ascending or descending. So I would be simply providing here descending. So if I save this and if we reload the page, we would be seeing our points or top 2 teams at the very top of the application here or inside the groups here. So we see that these 2 teams have Ecuador and Netherlands are at the very top, and then here we have England at the top, and this is what we have here. And then finally what we can do, we can simply get rid of this thing from here, that is from the standing page here, that is the pre-tags here. So if we save this, we see that we have this thing ready here, up and working. So the current time is 22nd November 2022, and the time is like night time 2 hours 3 minutes, and that is GMT plus 5:30 hours. So this is all what we have done in this video. So that's all about this video. So if you have liked the video, do hit the like button, and if you haven't still subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to the channel. So thank you, bye bye, tata, take care, and have a good day and have a great day.